Okay, another round of tweaks and updates done to the live room here at Ultimate Studios. I feel like each time I do these that I'm getting that much closer to what I really want out of this room. So far I'm really happy. And if you've seen the last couple of videos, you know that the emphasis was very much on the drums. But I have been doing some acoustic guitar sessions and some piano sessions in the middle of all this as well. And I can say that I'm really happy with how everything is benefiting from these changes. Having said that, I am chomping at the bit to really do a deep dive, do some serious recording, and get creative with all these new options that I have. So what I'm going to do is take an old demo, or not an old demo, but a demo that we've used quite a bit here on the channel. And I'm going to see if I can put my super creative, cap on and reimagine the arrangement or reimagine the orchestration a little bit. I'm going to record some new drums. I've got some bass from Minnow. Ernesto was kind enough to lay down some DI'd guitars of some different parts so I can do some reamping. So we're going to pull out guitar pedals, lots of them actually, drums and on guitar. Going to use a couple different guitar rigs, even going to use some plugins. And I'm going to have some fun and just see if I can come up with a new version of this demo that we've used many times. So with that said, let's get busy. I want to start with playing the whole tune with the new drums that I've tracked, our existing bass, and the DI'd guitars. And all the DI'd guitars just have a basic Guitar Amp Pro setting on them. So let's take a listen so we know our starting point. That's the starting point. And I could leave the drums there. I could just get a nice sound and pick, the room mics I like and let it go, but that seems a little bit too easy. I do have an overall roadmap in my head of what I want all the elements to do, what gear I'm going to use, the type of texture I'm going after. So let's look at the drums first, because we're going to start this whole transformation from the drums and work our way to bass and then guitar. So you can see here, I have some edits already in the drums. These are not actual edits. They're not comps. I did one whole take. What I'm doing here is I've already made up my mind on some things that are going to get turned on and off. So I'm going to start the whole song with the single fat head. And that is going here. I'm going to turn all these plugins off so you can just hear that mic real quick. That is a great mic for drums. And it's actually a really cool mono sound, but it just sounds like drums. So I'm gonna do 4 things to it. First off, Trident Tiltration. Love this plugin. The saturation is fantastic. The filters are great too. I love how the saturation well, you'll hear in a second how it makes this whole kit kind of bloom a little bit with that mic. Next up, some Logic pedals. Graphic EQ, pulling some harshness, pulling a little low mid there. This grit plugin, if I'm not doing something outside the box with my pedals, this one gets used a ton for me. Love it. Following that up with a Trident 9066, just a little bottom and some mid-range. And last but not least, a good old-fashioned Logic compressor. And I dig this, use it all the time. So here's what it sounds like with all that on there. See where I'm going? So we're gonna make it mono. So here's the intro now with the all the plugins on, and the drums with music. So now we've got a very different sounding intro. The B section, making a couple other choices. First off, that mono mic gets turned off. The whole drum set's gonna come on. I'm gonna turn off the 4080s, and I'm gonna I'm gonna turn off the 4050 stereo, which is in the front. And I'm gonna open up the 4080 room mics, which is the good old Audio-Technica ribbons. Actually sounds like a nice room sound, but we're going to continue our texture from the intro. So I'm sending both of these mics out to 2 channels on the board and over here to a pair of overdrive pedals. Since I don't have 2 matching pedals, I decided to go with the OCD and the OD glove because they are kind of similar, though you can see my settings are kind of different. I wasn't trying to set them exactly the same. And then that goes to another piece of gear after that, but I'm gonna turn that off for a second. We'll get to that. So here's what it sounds like with just those pedals. Really blowing things up a little bit. But I'm gonna follow that up. Let me move this camera down real quick. With my Dynamite compressor. But I'm not actually compressing. There we go. So I'm on this one right here. Not actually gonna compress, I'm going to use the expander instead to try to tighten the sound up a little bit. So let me set a loop and I'll kick that on after a couple bars. I wanted to see if I could get the room mics to be blown up, but kind of follow the close mics a little bit better. So let me pull that all in. I'm gonna go ahead and mute the track real quick, all the tracks. And here's just the drums. I like the texture. I like how it stays behind the close mic, so the drums are still punchy. But because I am gonna do something to the bass and I'm going to get a little extreme with some gain on the guitars, I wanted to tighten up that tail that was happening from those room mics going through the guitar pedals. So here is everything together. So it's just some gritty texture behind the drums. All right, C section. We're gonna make another change here. First off, I'm gonna turn off, too many things. Turn off the group so I can turn off one at a time. I'm gonna turn off the 4080s. I'm gonna bring back the 4050 stereo, and I'm gonna bring back that mono fathead. Let's turn off the intro one. But now with that fathead, there's gonna be nothing on it. It's gonna be crystal clean. So let me solo that real quick, and the 4050. So here's what the room mics are gonna sound like on the C section. So you see what's happening with the texture here? We started with grit, mono, went to stereo, but still had all that grit. Now the grit is gone. We're on the widest sounding room mics because the 4050s, I have it set to 127 degrees, so it's as wide as possible. It's a halftime groove with some space, so I wanted the drums to feel like, we're finally opening up. So the transition to get from the grit to that clean sound happens at this drum fill. And it happens right here, and that's where I go to the toms on that fill. So here's what it sounds like getting from B to C, the transition from the 4080 gritty rooms to the 4050 clean rooms. I think it's pretty smooth. In context, it might actually kind of go by you and you might not even notice till you're into the C section that there's been a change in texture, which could be kind of cool too. Okay, the outro. I'm gonna make another set of changes. I'm gonna turn more things off again. And we're gonna go back to kind of a mono sound here. And I'm gonna bring this Colaris in. So the one addition I'm gonna make is this Colaris that I have in the room that's, you know, back towards the back of the room, but facing the wall. And here's what that sounds like right here. But I'm only gonna blend that in a little bit. So that's actually gonna be my ambience. Everything else is gonna come down to mono. And hear that transition. Go back a couple bars. And that is the path of our drums. I'm gonna print those room mic 4080 room mics in the session real quick, and then we will go take a listen to the bass. The bass is also going to get its own journey that's kind of gonna follow what the drums are doing, and the fact that it's gonna have a few different textures. So I actually like the bass tone that we have as our amp tone because it's a single Roswell Mini K 47X on the, I think it's the Polytone Mini Brute. So what I'm going to do is print another track that has some grit to it, and then I'm going to augment. So it's going to be like my gritty amp track and my, you know, somewhat clean amp track. Except for at the beginning, I'm only going to use this grit track. So first off, let's start. Let me pull the actual bass up. Let me turn off the send. Here's just what the bass sounds like. I think it's Minnow's P bass, which is fantastic. Matter of fact, go check out that 47X video. Great microphone. So what I'm gonna do now is send that out here to the console. It's gonna go over to my DIY RE color palette. I'm gonna use two colors. The first is gonna be 15 IPS, completely slammed. That's gonna get some grit, and I'm gonna follow that up with the Mojo Maestro, also completely slammed. And here's what that sounds like. So that's gonna be, the A is going to be just the print. So here's what that sounds like with the music on our drums, our final drums. Not gonna use any of the clean sound for that section. The B section, I'll probably blend that in a little bit. So it'll probably be something more like this. And I just want to put a little hair on the bass because the drums, even though it opens all the close mics, remember we still have that crazy stuff happening to the room. So I want to make sure there's a little bit of that gritty, hairy kind of texture going on throughout the instrumentation here. That's my goal. The C section, we're going to add one more thing to our second bass sound, and that's going to be the Behringer Ultra Chorus. And I'm only going to kick that on for this section. So let me solo that bass up again. Let's just take a listen to that only, because the part changes here. Off. And I'm gonna blend that other mic, our amp, back in, so it'll be something probably along the lines of this. So in context, that sounds like. And then for the outro, I'm gonna go back to just the amp bass. We're gonna clean things up, let it kind of calm down and sit nice. Okay, I'm gonna print that in real quick and then we're gonna go to guitars. This is gonna be fun. Okay, our guitar reamp setup. First off, I'm gonna use the orange Super Crush 100 for all of these guitar reamps. There will be some that are just the amp. I'm gonna have a couple with, well, basically all the others are gonna have different variations of pedals. So this is gonna be a lot of fun actually. So here's how I'm setting that up. Each guitar channel, you can see like right here, all these are all our DIs. And I'm sending out, I'm using my aux sends or my bus sends to send out an output. It comes out to the patch bay or out to my tie lines that are here in the control room. And I'm going up here to the Little Labs Red Eye. Then I'm going to any pedals and to the amp. And then it goes out to the live room where I have the 1960 lead with the single Audio-Technica 4047 on it. That's the setup. Now let's get to the good stuff. The intro sounds. This is kind of cool. I'm using the Orange Crush, obviously, but I'm using the Boss RE202 Space Echo. I am in love with this pedal. There is so much cool stuff you can do. I mean, you could literally waste weeks just playing with that thing. If you're in the market for a kick-ass delay pedal that is tweakable for days and has a really cool reverb on it, I've got affiliate links to zZounds down in the description. Go pick up one of these. You will not regret it, I promise you. I'm using it for a couple things. I am running a fair amount of gain on the amp, so I'm gonna get nice connection between all the power chords that were on the intro. But just to make sure everything really glues together and feels smooth, I'm adding some reverb from the Space Echo and a tiny bit of delay. The delay is gonna be obvious on the very last note because the tail of these guitars is part of my transition to the B section, and I think it's kind of cool. I am also pushing the saturation on the RE202 as well. It adds an extra layer of character. So let's take a listen to these intro guitars just by themselves. Nice and round. You can definitely tell that kind of orange amp sound is on them. But here's in context, and I'll let this play to the B because the transition is really cool. That tail from the Space Echo gives me a transition that dives away underneath the bass line. I think that's cool. I messed with that forever, just playing with settings until I got something that I thought was really bitchin'. That is a fun guitar pedal. I highly recommend checking it out. They did a fantastic job on it. Okay, up next is the B section, and I've got to go change guitar pedals. The rhythm guitars are gonna kind of help bring the whole overall vibe into focus. So first off, here are the distorted guitars on B. And that is the dirt channel, the dirty channel on the orange, as well as the Joe Meek pedal. I love this thing. It can get absolutely nuts. I'm using even order harmonics, odd order harmonics, all of it. I'm really just trying to push it into kind of a grainy, nasty thing like you can. I mean, there's still some definition in there. It's not fully squashed, but it's, you know, it's pretty aggressive. So in context, so with those guitars going on, now the gritty room mics underneath the drums start to make a little more sense because it helps kind of connect everything a little bit. And the same thing with the bass print too that had a little extra grit. So the C section, here's where it changes a little bit. We're gonna start with just the main rhythms on the C section, and that is just the orange, no extra pedal, not quite as gainy. Still plenty of gain. I should probably rephrase how I said that, but it doesn't have the extra push that's coming from the Joe Meek. So by contrast, here I'll just play those two. You can kind of get an idea of the difference. Let me go one more bar. They feel nicer in relation to the B section. So in context, I'm not trying to be clean anywhere on this. I'm really trying to add a ton of texture and just kind of make things interesting. That's all the main guitars. So now let's go to some of the bells and whistles stuff. This one's kind of fun because it's going to be a little bit of ear candy, and it's a little bit out of left field compared to all the other things that I've done so far. But it's just some good old skanks, some backbeats with the guitar. I pulled the Boss RE202 back out, the Space Echo, and I just went through some different selections here on the tape heads until I found something I like. Turn the intensity and the volume up on the delay. I've pegged the saturation and the wow and flutter. It is on the clean channel of the orange, so whatever grit you're hearing is actually coming from the Space Echo itself. So here's what that sounds like. You can really hear it diving with that wow and flutter, which is cool. So that's the B section. The C section is this. That might stand out a little bit more. The wow and flutter get a little lost in context. But let's just take a listen to that in context. So here is B. And C. But that's the skank guitars. Now I've got one more fun one, but I'm gonna have to take a break and play with some stuff. So I'll be back in a minute. Well, for you to be milliseconds, but I'm gonna go play around. The final two things that I put down on here are arguably for me the most fun, because I pulled out a pedal that I have not used a whole lot, but it rocks, and that's the Boss SY200. This guy is a ton of fun. This is another one that we got from our friends over at zZounds. I'll have links to this down in the descriptions, but holy crap, you can do some fun stuff with this. So I had two guitar parts that I wanted to alter, one completely and one augment. In the B section, there was a arpeggiated part. And that just goes over that B section. I want to do something entirely different, and that Boss SY200 allows you to do all sorts of cool stuff. So that arpeggiated part turned into this. I blended in some of that sound, so there is a little bit. I'm on the clean channel on the orange. There is a little bit of the actual arpeggiated guitar part, the clean in there, but most of it is that synth sound. Oh, it's so cool. So in context, you still hear the arpeggio. You just get that cool synth thing underneath it. At the end of the tune, there was an acoustic guitar that was in there from a previous recording that I wanted to keep. And I like how the whole thing kind of shrinks down, but I wanted to add a little bit of that, some different character underneath that acoustic. So the acoustic sounds like this. So I did a different setting, which is the one that's up now, some magical bell. And this one I'm actually using the reverb on. On the B section, I didn't use the reverb. So here's what I printed. Here, I sent that acoustic guitar to the orange, out to the cabinet, through these pedals, and this is what it did. I blend that with the acoustic. And so the whole end now does this. I'm going to pan that in the center, right underneath the acoustic. And that's how this sucker ends. I'm gonna go through all my levels, make sure everything feels good, and we'll do a final mix pass of this fun little arrangement. All right, I think I have everything mixed the way that I want it to sound now. I didn't do anything major, a little bit of filtering with some plugins you can see on the guitars, just really a lot of low end and some low mid, just clean up here and there, just to make things fit just a little bit better, but nothing major. The drums are coming out on the console on a stereo channel going over to the Heritage Audio successor. Love that one on drums. And then getting a little bit of the Dynamite for some parallel compression. And then the only other outboard gear is the Golden Age Comp 3A Junior on the bass. The drum rooms are on their own stereo pair. They are not going through the compressor. So basically it's a stereo pair of drums through the Heritage and the Dynamite. Stereo for the room mics, so they're all that stuff was done in the box and printed in. And then all the other music, the piano and the guitars, all that's just coming out a stereo channel here on the board, and then the bass coming out one mono channel. And then that's going to the mix bus, which is the Smart Research C1, Rupert Neve 542 tape emulators into the SSL Ultraviolet and over to the Apogee into the print machine. So not a whole lot being done, but I did make one change. As I was putting everything together, I decided that I wasn't completely stoked on the guitars for the C section. I wanted it to maybe open up a little bit more with the openness and the halftime feel of the drums. So I pulled out the Black Star, which is over here, the HT Club 50, and I reamped those guitars. And here's what just the guitars in the C section sound like. I stayed a little on the dark side, but it's not quite as squashed as I had it with the orange. And when we run through the final mix, which we're gonna do here right now, you'll get to hear what those sound like when it comes to the C section. So let's go to the top and take a listen to just how far we've come from the original recording. Here we go. There you go, quite different than where we started. But I think it's cool. This kind of stuff is fun to me to try to help make the movement of the song a bit more interesting and fun to follow. And I encourage all of you to do the same thing. It doesn't mean it has to be this drastic whatsoever, but trying to find something in the music that you're doing that is you and that just takes the listener on a journey not only is fun to do on this end of things, but I also think it makes a difference for the listener as well. So thank you all for joining me for this little ride. I hope you're all doing well. Happy recording and mixing. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.